The Hey You Guys team would like to issue a public apology to our listeners, especially the listeners that follow on and watch the films before we record. We watched Super Mario Brothers, the movie, this week, but we are very sorry for making you watch this film. Also, I would like to issue an apology to Liam, as Super Mario Brothers, the movie, was my choice. So I'm very sorry for putting you through this, Liam. But we watched it. We have to talk about it. So here we go. Name, Mario. Last name, Mario. And you? Luigi. Luigi? No, Luigi Mario. Okay, how many Marios are there between the two of you? 3. Mario, and Luigi Mario.
Goom, goom, aga goom, 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 aga goomba, goom, goom, aga goom, 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 aga goomba.
Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam, and this week we watched Super Mario Brothers, the movie, and once again, I can't apologise enough.
Well, you've started off on the right foot at least, because yes, this is your fault, but I am so glad that you didn't open with glug, 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 glug. That is, oh my God, that upset me. I forgot how upsetting that quote was. It is the most homoerotic quote. The idea of doing that with another man, let alone your brother, and they might be brothers, they might not be brothers, we'll get into that. But that whole hand thing they do and the glug, glug, it just made me uncomfortable. I don't of all the things I hate about this film, of which are myriad, I think that was perhaps top of the list.
I don't think they actually did that on set as well, because it looks, if you see their mouths, they're not moving. So I'm pretty sure they had to ADR, glug, glug, glug.
You think glug, glug, glug was added in post, yeah?
I think it was added in post, because...
Well, that speaks to the mess of this film, doesn't it? It was going in so many different directions, and it's like somebody thought, let's add glug, glug, glug in post to an already absolute abomination of a movie. Amazing.
I mean, they fixated too much on the fact these guys were meant to be plumbers. Honestly, the whole...
Yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because in the video games, yes, they're plumbers and there are indeed warp pipes.
Yeah.
But plumbing really isn't a part of their...
And they hugely fixed... Even to the point where they, like, in Cooper's world, Dino Hatton or whatever that is, they know what plumbers... What did plumbers do to Cooper? Because they have a plumber alert siren.
Yeah, that feels like it was already there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like before they showed up. It wasn't like they kind of rushed in. It's like, well, we're going to have to get a plumber alert for these two plumbers. Like they already had a plumber alert in place because historically plumbers have been, kind of causing King Koopa, which I still can't get, by the way, the whole King Koopa Bowser. Is he Bowser? Is Bowser ever mentioned? Or is he just King Koopa?
I think he's King Koopa. I mean, I will turn around and say, right, before we go too far into this movie, we're never linear on this podcast. We never follow the movie straight. We always go to the bits we want to pick out. But this podcast will be an even more of a mess because this film was a mess. I don't think this film knew what it wanted to do.
No, this is one of the messiest mainstream movies of recent, when I say recent times, I mean, we are talking 30 years ago, well, of my lifetime at least. In terms of the plot is actually relatively straightforward. I think the biggest issue is the tonal inconsistencies. This film just doesn't know what it wants to be. And it all comes back to its inception as a movie. You know, the fact that, I mean, for people who don't know, this film was picked up by Robert Joff. He was the director of The Killing Fields and The Mission, 2 really well-received late 80s, early 90s movies. And off the back of those, he actually wanted to get into movie production. So we're talking a really small production company here, and with a small budget, and certainly in terms of as a pitch. But he flew out to Nintendo and met the president, Hiroshi Yamauchi. And basically, he just had like a really strong pitch, which it seems surprising given what, ended up on screen. But, you've got all these other major companies, so much more money. And Super Mario Brothers in 1992 was arguably the hottest it's ever been. This is coming off the back of, Super Mario Brothers 3, one of the biggest video games of all time. And he's just convinced them, no, this is how you should make it. And like so many films around this time, a lot of it actually comes back to Batman 1989. We're like, we're going to take your Dayglow, kid-friendly, family-friendly kind of IP, and we're going to turn it into something which is accessible to adults as well. So, the pitch initially was like, this is going to be a darker take on Mario. This isn't going to be like in the video games, like blue skies and a simplistic narrative. And I guess, you know, Nintendo were of the mindset, it's like, well, that sounds kind of interesting. Let them do their own thing. It's like, we've got our thing. It's not, maybe their idea was that it wasn't going to impact their product because it was so far removed. And of course, the big thing as part of the pitch was that he said, oh, well, you're going to have all merchandising rights, which on paper sounds great, but was completely useless to this because nobody wanted to buy Super Mario Brothers, the movie merch. Who the fuck wants a Goomba, you know, doll? They are so ugly.
No, were they
so
Goomba
ugly.
Dolls?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I hope not, because they are one of the more horrific creations in cinematic history.
Of everything,
sorry.
So of everything you just said, do you know what upset me the most in all of that?
What's that?
The whole thing that this film is nearly 30 years old.
I know.
I feel.
Though,
I know we watch 80s films and they're coming up to 40 years old and things like that, but I never feel like they are. But now I know the Super Mario Brothers is 30 years old next year, which makes me very old anyway. I'm very upset about that.
I know what you mean. And all I can put that down to, because I often feel the same way, is the fact, and we've talked about this before, with a lot of these 80s films, we didn't actually watch them when they came out. No. They were like, as far as we were concerned, when we were 5, 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, they were pre-existing entities. You know, a lot of these films came out in like 1984. You know, 1984, I was 2 years old. I have no recollection of that, you know, these films being released. Even Ghostbusters, I was 85. No, Ghostbusters was 84. So I was 2 years old. Yeah, so it was a pre-existing thing. So I look back and I don't think of myself as being old when I look back to the Ghostbusters, because the Ghostbusters, in my mind, is older than I am. I know it's not technically, but you know what I mean. But films from the early 90s, like Super Mario Brothers, I think it's because we have that memory of them being released. Yeah. That I remember Super Mario Brothers coming out, and therefore I'm like, oh yeah, that does age me, because that is 30 years ago, and I have quite a vivid memory. Like same with like Jurassic Park. Like I remember going to see Jurassic Park. I remember it being a big thing. So therefore, yes, old. I feel so old.
I remember that we used to play outside. I mean, spoiler alert, when you were growing up in the 80s and 90s, you got to play outside. We were playing out, and one of the kids in school, I think one of the kids in my street, I think his name was Matthew, got to actually go and watch Super Mario Brothers. And for me at that time, that was a big thing, getting to go to the cinema. That was a birthday treat for me. Getting to go to the cinema.
It was the same for me. Yeah. We didn't go to the cinema regularly at all. It was kind of like the same way as, it's bizarre now because I don't think of like going to the cinema as a big deal, or getting a takeaway, especially a takeaway. When I was younger, going to the cinema and getting a takeaway, that was a birthday. Yeah, birthday 100% all over. Yeah. The only takeaway we ever got was a chippy. That was the only thing that ever happened. So if I was getting like a Chinese or an Indian, it was 100% my birthday. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I remember him coming back from the cinema, and we're all just around him like it was the event of the summer. Do you know what I mean? Got to go to the cinema, and he's selling us on this film to the point where I'm begging my parents to let me go and watch Super Mario Brothers. I'm quite happy.
He's done you dirty there, bro.
I am quite happy that my mum said we'll wait for it until it comes out on video. Because I remember watching this film once, and I didn't even watch it when it came out on video at that time. I think 93, so I probably watched it. I went to high school in 94, so I probably watched it around about 97. It was the one and only time I've watched it. And I remember just coming away from it going, yeah, that wasn't good.
No, it was, and I think I knew from it, because I was like the perfect market for that. Like I was a big video game kid. I was a massive Nintendo kid. Like one of my friends had Super Mario Brothers 3, and it felt like the biggest deal in the world at the time. Especially because I remember getting my Nintendo with Super Mario Brothers in like, I guess it would have been about 1990, and that was a big deal, but that had been out, you know, Super Mario Brothers 1 was released in 85. So it didn't feel cutting edge, but it was still this great game, and I was just excited to have a Nintendo. But when my friend got Super Mario Brothers 3, it felt so far ahead of any other game I'd played. I remember like the map system coming up. I was like, I can't believe there's a map. I can't believe there's all these other worlds. And I was so excited and so in that kind of mindset of like Mario being one of the biggest things on the planet. And yet this film, from the offset, had no interest for me. Like, I remember not wanting to see this in the cinema. I didn't want to see it on VHS, and I finally got around to it. And I think one of the reasons for that is that even from a young age, above all else, I found this film aggressively ugly. I think this film is ugly on an avant-garde level. That's how ugly. It's imaginatively ugly. And it's strange because on a technical level, this film's got 1,000,001 problems. Like, you know, it's an amalgamation of so many scripts, ideas, tones, and none of it works. The actors aren't happy to be there, obviously. But one thing it does have going for it is that technically it's super impressive. The sets, while I don't like them, if it was in another film, you'd be like, holy shit, the set design is unbelievable. Like Bowser's Kingdom looks, if you take personal taste out of it on a technical level, it's really impressive. If you look at Yoshi, the animatronics are super impressive.
They said there was like 600 feet of cable jammed into that dinosaur.
And it was criminally underused because that's one of the best things in this film is Yoshi. It looks really cool. And the CG, while it's aged quite poorly, for 1993 was cutting edge in the way it combined CG with physical effects. Again, not aged amazingly, but it was impressive for 1993, make no mistake. And of course, it's got some very talented actors involved. But despite all that talent there, I don't think I have ever found a movie more aggressively unpleasant. And when I look at this film, I mean, what I see on screen is a combination of 12 Monkeys, the Flintstones, and Blue Velvet. I mean, it's such a bizarre film. Dennis Hopper, at times in this film, goes full Frank Booth. I'm not sure if you've ever seen Blue Velvet. But when he's not delivering reams of very clumsy exposition, this is a character, like, he's obsessed with cleanliness. At one point, he tries to legitimately poke out Luigi's eyes. Like, you know, he gets very rapey with Daisy at one point in the film. Short of actually having a kind of oxygen mask, there are parts of this film where I was like, dude, he's going full Frank Booth. And it runs completely contrary to his, like his character when he shows up and he's big and he's, like I said, delivering this horrendous exposition. Like his introduction is totally cold. He's got the ridiculous hair, the ridiculous suit, and he just goes straight into what felt like 20 minutes of clumsy exposition. And then after that, he's suddenly Frank Booth from Blue Velvet. And I'm like, well, that sums up the tone of this film fucking perfectly. Yes, I'm not a fan.
No, I kind of noticed. Look, I am going to say, if you want to watch a good film about Super Mario Brothers, watch The Wizard.
Well, the thing is, The Wizard, make no mistake, is also a complete piece of shit.
Film, yeah.
But you can enjoy The Wizard. Yeah. Like, I have every faith that if I went back and watched The Wizard, it wouldn't be a great film, but it's one I could feasibly enjoy. And that was what I was hoping for with this. Like, I knew it was a disaster. I didn't like it when I was younger, but I was kind of hoping for a Batman and Robin kind of style disaster where it's a terrible film, but it's so silly that you can kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
I took no enjoyment from rewatching this film at all. That was the issue with it.
I know I've kind of ruined any good standing I had with picking films after this one, but I will say somewhere down the line when you least expect it, The Wizard will probably happen. I look forward to see, like, legitimately, I would happily rewatch The Wizard because I have fun. Like, when I was younger, and that's the difference. You know, I realized my kind of critical response to movies isn't going to be the same as when I, 10 years old versus 40. But when I was younger, like, I enjoyed The Wizard. I didn't enjoy this even when I was a kid. Yeah. Like, it was an unpleasant movie to watch. And again, it keeps coming back to that really shaky tone. And obviously, from the off, I mean, these poor directors, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, who were completely out of their depth, in fairness. They just never worked on a film with this kind of budget before. Husband and wife, apparently. And apparently they were the ones that ruined it because there was just so much arguing. It was like mum and dad fighting. So they were arguing so much that you get this piece of shit that you get.
I think it'd be unfair to blame. Obviously we don't, there's a million and one stories which have come out of the production of this film. And obviously those two arguing is a big part of it. And I don't think they help with the production of this film at all. But I think it was ill-conceived from the very start. I think it goes right back to Robert Joff's initial pitch for this film. The casting's actually not that bad. Like, if you'd said on paper to me in 1993, there's going to be a Super Mario Brothers film and Bob Hoskins is going to play Mario, I'm like, I know, that's fucking perfect.
He looks perfectly, he's married. Like, I mean, to be fair, he didn't bring Mario. He probably never even played a Mario game up until that point.
He officially had. He didn't even know what Mario was when he signed up. He had no idea what Mario was. He was there for the paycheck.
So I got a question for you. And it may be the fact that Amazon Prime didn't even... Because we watch this on Amazon Prime in the UK. Mm-hmm. Maybe they didn't think that anyone would watch this film, so it doesn't matter. Or anyone who released the digital just thinks that we'll release it, but nobody's going to watch it, so it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Do you think it was a little on the nose that when Cooper travels to... And we will get to the fact that for some reason, only certain select people are allowed to travel when the rocks merge. for certain, like not, even though the universes merge, only a few select people travel. That's fine. But did you think it was a little on the nose when they showed a destructive Twin Towers after it traveled?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Because you think sometimes, I mean, we talked about that a few podcasts ago when we were watching Independence Day.
Yeah.
Because obviously in Independence Day, they destroy a lot of very famous, American icons, as it were, and we're like, imagine if in this film, in Independence Day, they had a close-up of them destroying the Twin Towers. Like, would they have cut it out? And it's not as nearly as prevalent as that would have been.
Yeah.
Because it is in the background, but you do see the Twin Towers
destroyed,
largely destroyed. Yeah. But
and I wonder
I think if it had been a more popular film, maybe they would have had that.
That's what I'm saying. They're going, look, I'm not wasting the money on removing the Twin Towers because, like, 3 people, 2 random Welsh lads will watch this one day for a podcast, but other than that, nobody else is going to see this fucking mill.
No, I don't even think they've had that conversation. I don't think anyone is kind of gone, oh, dude, I watched this film 30 years ago, and I'm pretty sure there's a scene at the end. Nobody, like the people who've even seen it, don't remember it. Like, no. I was surprised by how little I remembered of this film. Like, it started coming back to me as I watched it, but my overriding memories were just Dennis Hopper's haircut.
Yes.
Obviously, Luigi and Mario, the whole Mario, Luigi thing. The fact that they keep, and again, you brought it up at the top with that quote. They say their names to each other so many times in the first 10 minutes of this film. It's not just that. I mean, obviously, there's that quote, but they just keep referring, hey, Mario, hey, Luigi, how's it going, Mario? Hey, Luigi. And I'm just like, yeah, we get it. You're Mario and Luigi. Fucking take your foot off the gas, dude. It's so annoying. But the one thing I will say is that does technically make sense. The whole, he's Mario, and I'm Mario Luigi, because it's called Mario Brothers. Yeah. And if his name is Mario, really what the game should be called is Mario and his brother.
Yeah.
Because unless his name is indeed Mario and he's Luigi Mario. So I get what they were going for there. And I might have been able to accept it if they hadn't spent the first 20 minutes of this film constantly saying Mario and Luigi over and over.
What put me out of that as well is they're trying to turn around and say that Dino Hatton is this place of debauchery and things like that. Like, things, for some reason, things have gone worse, and it seems to be because of Cooper, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But they're in a prison scene and they're having the Mario, Luigi Mario discussion. But you've got this weird PVC leg just kicking the officer in the face constantly.
I've literally got that written down. I was like, wait, let me find my note. Oh, here it is. What's up with that fucking foot? That is my note. Yeah. I was just like, what is that? Because you don't see the woman, you just see the foot over his shoulder. It's just a foot.
Yeah. Like, just a weird PVC foot just kicking him in the face constantly.
Yeah, I think that is one of my least favorite parts of the movie. And it's one of the things I remember most vividly from my youth watching it is that whole detention center and processing kind of scene, because it's actually surprisingly violent. It's got and what it reminds me of, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, the fact that this film reminds me of 12 Monkeys, but that scene in particular has that gross overbearing, like you can taste the air, which of course works perfectly in 12 Monkeys. It does not work perfectly in Super fucking Mario Brothers. And the scene when they get like devolved is actually quite disturbing.
Yeah.
When they get kind of shoved up into the machine. I was like, I remember disliking that then, and I dislike it even more now.
Do you know what? You said, right, you watched the detention center thing and it made you think of 12 Monkeys. This is where we differ, because I watched that and it made me think of Garbage Pail Kids. Because there's a prison scene in the Garbage Pail Kids, which is quite kind of like that, where they're all in these weird boxes, cage boxes.
Mm-hmm. That might be the best thing to come from the rewatch of this film, is that I feel so much more confident in my vetoing of Garbage Pail Kids. I'm like, you've had Super Mario Brothers, you can go fuck yourself. You think you're having Garbage Pail Kids as well. It's not happening. So, yes, needless to say, I think 12 Monkeys is arguably a slightly better film than Garbage Pail Kids. The fact that it reminds you of either of those films suggests that maybe tonally they got something wrong here for sure. But I guess the interesting thing is, do you think that this could have been a better film, or do you think it could have been saved by some of the original casting that was put forth for this film? I mean, the big one for me was the because I guess it was the direction that would have come with it, was that they were going to have Harold Ramis play Luigi, and they were going to have Danny DeVito playing Mario, but also they were going to have Danny DeVito direct this. And I can't help but think this would have been a very different movie if Danny DeVito had directed it. You know, because I don't want to throw like Bob Hoskins under the bus, because I think Bob Hoskins, despite his lack of interest, completely looks the part, and he's fine in it. And even John Leguizamo, he's not terrible as Luigi, despite the fact he's something of an idiot savant and he's a bit of a creep, but whatever. But I think a film where it's Harold Ramis and Danny DeVito, but more specifically Danny DeVito directing it, you'd like to think it would have been a better movie.
We say it a lot because in this podcast, with these rewatches, there's always a what could have been. This is who was originally cast. This was originally what they wanted it to be. And we always say, it would be a different film, but I like what I've got on screen here. It's not with this one, is it? It would have been a different film, and I kind of wish I would have had that film instead.
Oh, yeah. And there's a bunch of other ones. Like, at one point, like, I think Tom Hanks was literally signed on to be Luigi.
Yeah, can I go into that?
Yeah, go.
Tom Hanks was signed on to Luigi, but they didn't hire him because Joe versus the Volcano and Turner and Hooch failed. So they thought he wasn't anymore a big box office draw. Tom Hanks, not a big box office draw for this film.
The thing is, for Tom, I think rather than the movie itself, I think it's perhaps more of a sliding door moments for Tom Hanks, because subsequently, instead of doing this movie, he went on to do Philadelphia, won an Oscar, and fundamentally changed the course of his career for the rest of his life. You know, because he was, you know, I think for a lot of younger viewers, you know, they'll see Tom Hanks and they'll think of him as predominantly this Oscar winner, this kind of, you know, this leading man kind of vibe. But like back in the late,
get him from Bachelor Party, from Turner and Hooch,
late 70s to like the late 80s, he was a comedy actor, like 100%. You know, like what was the other one? Dragnet, Big, all these films, like for the longest time. And
the computer was it? No, not the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. It was the other one, wasn't it? The man with one red shoe. That was.
I mean, but that was his shtick. He was predominantly a comedy actor, and it was only after he did Philadelphia and obviously ended up winning the Oscar, and that was a big hit, that led to Forrest Gump, to I was going to say the war movie, the Steven Spielberg war movie. I just remember the name of it.
Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan. Yeah. So that absolutely changed the course of his career, obviously for the best.
Forrest Gump, 1994, a year after this film.
It's insane, right? It's absolutely insane. And you do think it's like, what could his career? Because, like you said, he was coming off the back of a couple of flops there. Because obviously he'd done, you know, some really big films in the 80s, the aforementioned Big, etc. But he's coming off two, you know, perceived flops, despite the fact that we've done The Burbs and we adore The Burbs, but it wasn't a massive financial hit. Joe versus the Volcano was a bit of a flop. If he had then gone on to do this and then had those three films back to back to back, like, who's to say that? I'm not saying he would have disappeared off the map, but, you know, sometimes it's a long way back to get that big role. But to end up doing Philadelphia instead, oh my God! Talk about dodging a bullet, man.
Can you imagine the casting, right, for any other film? Who do you want for this film? Tom Hanks. What, the Mario guy? No.
Yeah.
No.
So rather than the alternate of being like, oh, could this have been a good film? The real alternate universe here is, did Tom Hanks just quietly fade away in the movie business?
Yes.
But it wasn't just him. Like, the two other big ones, I suppose, were Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Keaton were both down to be King Cooper or Bowser, whatever you want to call him. Which, again, I actually think Arnold Schwarzenegger probably would have suited the character a bit better in this film, especially his imposing nature. But I'm not sure if anyone could have saved the writing. Like, the writing in this film is bad. It's bad from like the minute the film starts, and you get that weird, almost like Jurassic Park intro. Like, it reminded me, you know, like in Jurassic Park, you have that exposition scene when they're on the ride. But of course, they do a great job of camouflaging the fact that it's that they're basically just delivering exposition, because it's a really well constructed scene. In this, it's plonked at the front. They still have the same clumsy cartoons, but of course, it's done with none of the panache that Spielberg delivered with Jurassic Park.
Did you recognize the narrator as well?
No.
Homer Simpson himself, Dan Castellaneta.
Is it really?
Yeah.
how the hell did he's got such a distinct voice? Like,
Yeah.
I think I was just caught up in the fact that I was like, oh, this reminds me of Jurassic Park, and then it just goes straight into the movie. And
So I want to cover a couple of things in the movie that didn't make sense. One of the biggest ones, and the reason we watched this film is basically the reason I watched this film was, does Fisher Stevens belong on my Mount Rushmore? And we will get to that answer. I know people are begging for that answer, so we will get to that
no
answer
doubt. Is Fisher Stevens on Mount Rushmore? Who knows? Who knows?
But Fisher Stevens, the two cousins had a little conversation, and I want to know how they knew that it was around her neck, the rock. Like, when they finally got the princess, and Cooper said, "Give me the rock," and he said, "What rock?" "The one she wears around her neck." Like, how, if they didn't know what the princess looked like, how did they know that she had the rock around her neck?
It doesn't make any sense, mate. But that is the least of your problems.
Oh no, it's not. That really took me out of this film.
That really is it. So it's Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson, yeah, is Iggy and Spike,
yeah.
And Iggy and Spike, so they're two of Bowser's kids, I think, from Mario 3 or Super Mario World, whatever. It doesn't matter because they are fucking terrible. They are so bad in this film.
Yeah,
their whole I hate these kind of broad comedy duos who are delivering this kind of early 90s shtick. I mean, Fisher Stevens, he's bad. I actually think that what's his name? I've got his name. Richard Edson is. I think he is worse. But as a duo, I find them very unpleasant on screen.
I involuntarily laughed out loud. Right, I actually had a laugh out loud moment, and I'm so ashamed when he walked into the glass at the beginning of the film when he was following Daisy.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like so much in this film, I mean, I'll give him their credit. You know, I don't want to completely rag on Fisher Stevens here, but I mean, make no mistake, this isn't as good. You know, he's a lot better in Hackers. And again, I should never have to say this out loud. The Hackers is a much better movie than this. You can only say that about a handful of movies ever made, that Hackers is a much better movie than that. But it is. But like, their whole shtick doesn't work. I don't like it from beginning to end, but what I really disliked was the fact that when they were supposedly evolved, so suddenly made very intelligent, they were still idiots. All that happened was that their vocabulary improved, so they were just well-spoken morons. That was it. And I think Fisher Stevens got a bit of an English accent, maybe. That was whatever. But that was the only thing that changed. Like, okay, you sound intelligent, but you're still acting like buffoons. It just, none of it really works. No. And of course, I always link them back to that machine, which I really found quite unpleasant. The whole
evolution thing, yeah.
And I think a big part of another reason that I hate that machine so much, of course, is that it leads to the Goombas, which we've already briefly mentioned. But
so
again,
these fucking Goombas, right? They turn Toad into a Goomba.
Which I was okay with because I hated Toad as well.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan of Toad either, so turn him into a Goomba, that's fine. But then they because Toad, obviously, from the video game is on the Mario Brothers side, so they need to say, okay, Toad is a good one, but he looks exactly the same. You only have two distinctive type of Goombas. The ones with the long faces or the ones with the round heads. So how are we going to make him stand out? I know, we'll give him his harmonica back, even though there's no reason now he is subservient to give him a harmonica. We'll do it just because he stands out.
Well, that is the problem, like you said, is the fact that they all look the same. There are the two different versions. The ones with the longer faces are somehow even more horrifying. I really don't know why they thought having them with tiny, I guess thematically they're like, well, they're shrinking their brains so their heads get smaller. I don't think that really I don't think that really works, but whatever. But again, going back to that, like my major issue with the film, and as I said, the issues are myriad, is the fact that everything is so ugly. It runs through to the character design as well. These Goombas are, this is supposed to be a kid's film. They're so unpleasant to look at. And yeah, they make this one Goomba, obviously Toad. They give him a big stupid grin and they give him,
harmonica.
A harmonica, thank you. But it's like, it doesn't make him any less unpleasant to look at. And the thing is as well, because they're so big and cumbersome, they don't really offer any threat because they can hardly move. So that was one of the big issues. I mean, I'm jumping straight to the end now. I mean, the end of this film is particularly messy. It's all over the shop. But nothing about what I've seen in Cooper's Kingdom suggests that these Goombas are going to just show up on planet Earth in 1992 and overrun the US Army. I'm thinking, like, if somehow they get past the cops in New York, which, let's be clear, they fucking won't, the army's going to show up and decimate them. A handful of these clumsy Goombas who can hardly walk with their stupid ray guns, they're going to get annihilated immediately. I've seen nothing to suggest they have any kind of air power. Like, they're just driving around in shitty cars. There's no tanks or anything like that. Again, they're going to get annihilated.
Only like 7 people transferred over. When when Rock met Rock, when they put that meteor piece into the meteor, and they were able to, what did he say? Our universe is emerging. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. But only 7 of you are merging. 5 Goombas and Mario and what's his face? Koopa. They're the only ones that merged over. And then for some reason the Twin Towers changed. Everyone else is just the same.
I don't get what the deal was. Like if the two worlds are merging, does everything suddenly become shit? Maybe there's something there. But as I said, as an invading force, they're not the most threatening I've ever seen. That's for damn sure.
And they've all got Super Nintendo light guns as well. Those SNES guns.
Well, they've got the Super Scope. So they've taken one of the shittest peripherals in Nintendo's history and made them a prominent part of this film. And I find it bizarre because obviously they have that in there. But there's a sequence where, for no apparent reason, Mario or Daisy, one of them, is using a touchscreen. And instead of a touchscreen, they've got like a light gun to aim. Yeah. But the light gun is like a totally generic 90s light gun. Like the 80s Zapper, the NES Zapper, it was so iconic at the time. It's like, why didn't you're using the Super Scope? Why the hell didn't you use the NES Zapper? Nintendo wouldn't even allow those light guns to be used on their Nintendo consoles because they thought they looked too real. So you could only use the NES Zapper specifically. So it's like, again, another one of those horrendous missed opportunities. But there are so many. Like I said, no minor changes could have saved this film. So
I've got a question for you, right? And you have to pick one. Would you take as something that was selling you from a film, all right, from Nintendo? Obviously, they turned the Super Scope, as you just said, into the evolution guns. Yeah. So does that sell you and you want that? Or would you rather, from the Wizard, I love the Power Glove, man. It's so bad. Would you take the Power Glove instead? The NES Power Glove. You take the Power Glove.
The difference is, right, the Power Glove was notoriously shit.
Yeah, it was terrible.
But it looked badass, man. It looks so badass. It still looks cool as shit now. Like it was absolutely useless for playing games, but it looked amazing. And when if you take 8-9-year-old me watching it back in the early 90s, and I saw that kid, that mega 90s kid with a Power Glove, I was like, well, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I stand by that. I think, in the same way, remember Rob the Robot that used to come with the NES?
Yes.
Yeah, he was also utterly useless, but he looked amazing. So they've handpicked the worst NES peripheral, and it wasn't a NES peripheral; it was a Super NES peripheral, the Super Scope. Both useless and ugly and oversized, and of course they picked that to go in this film.
There's a YouTube channel I follow called Angry Video Game Nerd, and he covers like all the old video games. He covers a lot of like the movie video games as well, from like Bill and Ted's. On the NES and things like that. And he did an episode on the Power Glove, and it's one of the best things I've ever seen. If you get a chance, Angry Video Game Nerd on YouTube with the Power Glove. And he is just, he's basically us. He's just so angry. He's swearing constantly, and he's trying to get this Power Glove to work it's insane. It is terrible.
No. It was nothing more than an aesthetic treat. But that is the thing. It did look like the kind of thing that could have shown up in any number of 80s movies, and I think that was the big draw. It legitimately looked like something straight out of a movie. It just didn't work. So, it was style over substance in the most extreme way possible.
Going back to Mario, the film, I kind of wonder if they were hinting at something else that maybe got cut, like a different kind of story. At the beginning of the film, you had the Queen, and we will get into the fact that nobody questioned the baby coming out of an egg in our world, but just before that, the Queen drops her off and runs away and then gets attacked by Koopa. killed in the cave-in. She's wearing a Goomba jacket. This is what I want to go back to that, because you're on about the Goombas, and the Goombas are massive. They're big and cumbersome. She's wearing a Goomba jacket, and it's bigger on her, but it's not like...
It's not nearly as big.
It's not going to be as big. But are they hinting that a Goomba helped her get out? Like, was there something more that they cut out of that? Do you know what I mean? Like, how did she get a Goomba jacket? Did she pick it up? Did she...
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. Because why would she have a Goomba jacket on?
I'm sure there is a director, the potential for a director's cut out there with a lot. I'm
grasping at straws, trying to find a better storyline for this film.
No, because the thing is, it is just bits and bobs of different scripts, and I think you can see signs throughout this film of, say, I think Barry Morrow, who did Rain Man, worked on an initial script for this, and I think they took even parts of that, and they actually, I think on set it was kind of jokingly called Drain Man, because Barry Morrow famously wrote Rain Man. They were like, this is basically the same thing. It was like, Mario and his borderline special needs brother going on a bit of an adventure. And there are elements of that. As I said, this whole idea of him being an idiot savant, like Luigi is a moron in this film. And of course you're supposed to kind of play up to the idea that he's like this innocent almost, but some of his interactions with Daisy in particular are kind of creepy, and as I said, I think tonally, again, is he supposed to be this heroic Luigi, or is he just supposed to be this moron? Because this idea that Mario's got to basically force feed him all his lines to just talk to a girl, like Luigi's like what, in his 20s at this point, like he's not a child. It just makes the whole relationship for me kind of weird. But like I said, that runs all the way through the film. The fact that you've got these competing scripts, these competing ideas, and they've just kind of thrown them all together in a mixer. Yeah. And obviously, one of the big issues with this film is that they were famously doing rewrites on the set. And I think Dennis Hopper in particular had a famous meltdown. Like, I think, Bob Hoskins probably didn't care at this point. He was just looking to go back to his mansion, which was being paid for, and hopefully get high with the rest of the set. But Dennis Hopper, I think one of the scenes, I think it was like a bedroom scene, just came in and he was like, this scene is shit, and just blew up for 30 minutes. And again, this was such a big movie. This was like a 40 million budget movie in 93, which was massive at the time. Yeah. Obviously it was a flop. I think the production budget was like 42 to 48 million. And I think globally it made 38. And of course that doesn't take into account, advertising, all the other nonsense. But he just had a meltdown when you've got you look at those sets and you realize it's not just the sets. There's like 40, 50, 60 extras on the scene at any one time. And of course, him just blowing up and deciding, I don't want to do this scene now. I want rewrites. It just grinds everything to a halt. It's costing more money. And supposedly this went on for like hours until eventually they're like, listen, we'll do whatever you want. We'll rewrite it. You can rewrite it. You can say whatever you want. We just need to film it. And then eventually he was just like, oh, we'll just do it as it is in the script. And it's just like, I think it just speaks to the mess of this film. You've got people who either don't know what they're doing, people who don't care what they're doing, or people who have just thrown in the towel. And you can just see it all over the screen.
Like you said, there's so many different movies within this movie. And what the fuck was the point with the Scapelli angle?
Dude, it's so like that is a perfect example of what you said about something where it's kind of like Mario keeps mentioning Scapelli, like he knows him or they've got some kind of relationship, but there's nothing in this film to suggest that exists.
Yeah, like Mario is so upset that Scapelli has angered him, but you turn on to Scapelli, I have a feeling you turn on to Scapelli and you go, so about Mario. Who? Mario. Who the fuck are you on about? And why has he got two first names?
Yeah, 100%. Like the way Mario spits, he's like, Scapelli. And it's just like, wait, how do you know Scapelli? And why do you give him monkeys? That whole narrative with Scapelli was so obviously from a completely different script. It was so half-baked. And I love the fact that in this film, it's like Daisy, who, fair play to the actress.
Samantha
Mathis, sorry. Samantha Mathis, sorry, finish her, please, Lena. She does an admirable job in the role. I think it's a pretty thankless task. She's relatively likable in the role. But you've got to put it into perspective. At the start of this film, she finds proof. She obviously finds this absolute goldmine, of of dinosaur bones, but not only dinosaur bones, dinosaurs with opposable thumbs.
Yes.
And Scapelli's are just like, no, we're gonna build a fucking car park over this, or wherever the hell their stupid ass plan was. Dude, she should be like the richest. Like she's talking about the university failing to provide funding. As soon as they find dinosaurs with opposable thumbs, that is the greatest scientific find of our time, or any time.
It should have been on the fucking news. You should have been going, what? Opposable thumbs? It should have been on the
front of Time magazine. Like, that should have been the movie. Like, this woman finds proof of dinosaurs with opposable thumbs. It's like, that's the movie. But they're like, no. The Scapellis and their slick back hair and their overt tans. Like, no. This fucking mall or car park, or whatever the hell they're doing, this is going to bring in all the bunts. We're going to flood this. It's insane. It's insane.
Isn't I don't get it. Isn't he just a plumber? Scapelli, from what I can gather, like, because they're just beating Mario out of plumbing jobs. But yet,
is that what he is?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Because when Mario got to the when they had their job and Luigi was driving the wrong way.
Oh yeah.
And the Scapellis already beat them there. And it's the Scapelli
that was
plumbing.
The Scapellis.
That's the Scapellis.
Oh my god,
so
the
aren't they just
the plumbers? Like, it's so poorly written, dude.
Can I say
the thing is?
You mentioned Samantha Mathis, right? Massive crush on Samantha Mathis. Not from this film, from Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater from back in 19...
I thought you might have said Broken Arrow.
Broken Arrow, Samantha Mathis, yeah. No, Pump Up
Another
the
Christian... Obviously, she had some kind of relationship with Christian Slater going on, because Pump Up the Volume and Broken Arrow. And those were only... In terms of, if you look back at a back catalogue, they're really the only other films that stand out, I think, for most people.
Yeah.
And they're both Christian Slater films. I actually had a bit of a soft spot for Broken Arrow. I was one of the first I saw in the cinema.
I like Broken Arrow. And I always linked, because you had Broken Arrow, and this is totally going off the rails, but John Travolta's bad guy theme in Broken Arrow was David Arquette's good guy theme in Scream. It's the same do-do-do-do. Yeah.
That's a bit. That's a weird film. Like I said, I have quite fond memories of watching that film, but I suspect if I went back and saw it now, it might not hold up particularly well.
I do have a soft spot for 90s John Woo.
90s
Western John Woo. I've always liked John Woo films, but his Western John Woo's like Face Off, this.
I mean, I liked his a lot of his Hong Kong output as well.
I love Hard Boiled is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love Hard Boiled. I mean, John Woo up until probably, I think Mission Impossible 2 was when, it started going off the rails for him, and I don't think he ever quite recovered from that. But yeah, he had a good run of, say, 10, 15 years, if you include his Hong Kong output, which why wouldn't you? He had an amazing run. And even now, despite the fact that I'm off the rails, I still think when people see doves, or if you have a slow motion shootout, I still think people think of John Woo.
Yeah,
he's had such a massive impact on action cinema for sure.
As much as we love the Super Mario Brothers movie, we've gone on to John Woo.
Dude, I'd much prefer to talk about John Woo than fucking Super Mario Brothers. But
let's go back to the fact that the Scapelli apparently are just plumbers. From where
they are just plumbers. Well, I think it'd be a good segue, I suppose, because we were talking about John Woo, and whatever you might think of John Woo, he does great action. It's another thing this film absolutely fails at. The action sequences, and one of them, there's a chase earlier in the film where there's obviously some budget behind that. There's some actually pretty impressive explosions, all of which are invariably ruined by, terrible dialogue soon after. But even those, they're shot so poorly. You can see the money behind it because you see the cars, and like I said, the explosions are real explosions. But everything looks like it's driving at 2 miles per hour. Yeah. And you can totally tell that Mario and Luigi aren't in the car. It's they're cutting from a car chase to them just sitting in a car in a dark room. And it just looks so bad. And of course, this goes right through to the end of the film. There's a chase scene at the end of the film, which is somehow even worse. And again, you start thinking, why aren't there carts? Why, Mario Kart is so famous. Yeah. And it's and I know this is 92, but I'm pretty sure it was already out on the Super NES. Or if not, it was in the pipeline, no pun intended. But it's instead of these Mad Max style, Terry Gilliam-esque cars from this dystopian future, why not have fucking Mario Karts, for God's sake? You can literally have whatever you want. It's an alternate universe. But no, we're going to have these stupid Mad Max cars instead. It was so, like I said, poorly shot, poorly conceived. Everything about it.
So August 92. So again, this was released in 93, but filming. So I don't know when the filming was, but yeah, it was literally ready to go when they were filming it. So they had such a great tie-in to that film, to that game.
Yeah.
They could have used it. And you said about those cars driving slowly, right? No more so. And this is in no way, shape, or form a slag to Bob Hoskins, because I love him to bits. I nearly said Dustin Hoffman, but no, he's Bob Hoskins. I love him to bits. But I can't imagine him outrunning a car, right?
No, I don't think so.
But yet he's able to outrun a car. So
well, that's how slow they goddamn
slow
moving.
these cars are going. Even to the point where they were able to stop because they saw a bomb. So they're not moving as fast to see a bomb. Do you see the product placement on that bomb as well?
What is going on with that Reebok thing? What? And again, you've already got a slow moving action sequence. So then you add a very slow moving bomb. Yeah. Like, we'll give it. It doesn't have trainers on. It's just got his little feet, but it's just got Reebok written on the bomb for no reason. No fucking reason. Like, if, say, you know, like the Mario and Luigi got those jumping boots, which were actually one of the better ideas. They were
good, but they took the bullets from the game and made them fucking cartridges.
Like, yeah, it was that was just clumsy, whatever. But they actually look pretty cool, the little bullet bills. But yeah, it was. Why don't you actually just use the bullet bills as, I don't know, fucking bullets. Whatever. Like, they have, like, Bowser shoots the flame gun, and it's like the flames from the ends of the original Super Mario Brothers game when you're in Bowser's castle, and the flames are kind of coming across the screen until you reach Bowser. That was kind of cool. But yeah, the fact that they used the bullets but didn't use them as bullets was bonkers. But the jumping boots, like, if they'd made those Reebok in an alternate universe, I'm like, yeah, like, you remember, like, in 92, you had, like, the Reebok pumps. You could have even had, rather than cartridges, you could have had them pump up and stuff. It would have been pretty overt product placement, but it would have made sense. Just having Reebok written on the bottom of a bomb made no sense. And it was just, yeah, like you said, it just kind of all lends itself to the fact that this was the slowest moving chase in cinema history.
And you said about no sense. I'm adamant that Bowser is a massive turtle in the games. Where the fuck did T-Rex come from?
Yeah. I don't know. Again, it makes no sense. And that CG at the end was appalling.
It was really terrible. Bad. Like, it's the same year where they're doing Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it is weird because, like I said, Yoshi didn't look out of place in that. I thought, like, Yoshi wouldn't have looked out of place in Jurassic Park. I actually thought he was as impressive, like, legitimately as impressive as anything you see in Jurassic Park. It's that good. But the CG at the end is outrageously bad. It's aggressively bad. But before I get onto two other things that I despise about this film, and I really do despise them,
I cannot wait for your loves. I cannot wait for your loves.
I do want to find something that I liked, and I thought they were trolling us at first, because there's a scene when they're kind of trying to go undercover and they're looking for these plumbers, and they give them, like, yellow and green suits. And it's like, they're terrible 90s suits, but they're the wrong color. Like, like Luigi's in red and Mario's in yellow. And you're like, wait a minute, are we being trolled here? Why aren't they in the right colors? And I was getting so angry. But in fairness, when they do put them in the traditional suits,
the plumber suits,
it actually looks pretty cool. The suits are, when you add they're totally underused. But when they're in the suits and they've got the boots on, I was like, that's not bad. That's not, and it's strange because, like I said, they use the boots like twice. And there's one sequence in particular where Luigi, they have to, like, there's like a tunnel. There's just like basically a jump to your doom. And he's like, I don't know what Luigi's plan is. He just jumps off. He's like, oh, just have faith.
Yeah.
And he just jumps into nothingness, assuming, again, this whole idea that Luigi's a complete moron. As far as I can tell, he had zero plan. He was just jumping to his death. And luckily, the fungus saved him. It was insane. Why didn't you use your jumping boots? Maybe you didn't have enough bullet bill cartridges. It's all very strange. But see, I'm shitting on it again. But for at least that one moment when they put the suits on, and Bob Hoskins, and even John Leguizamo, standing next to each other, I was like, oh, well, you look the part. For 5 minutes in this film, you totally look the part, at least.
You look great, right up until, as soon as you put those suits on, you decide to go glug, 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 glug.
Oh, yeah, they do the glug, glug, glug thing. But don't worry, it doesn't last long, because two of my least favorite things of this film. One, I mean, I almost enjoyed it because it's that insane. The club sequence. I mean, you probably enjoyed it because it had that terrible song, Everyone Do the Dinosaur.
Get on the floor, everybody do the dinosaur.
that song probably was the catchiest thing about. That's the one thing my wife took away from this film, was like, oh, I like that song. I was like, well, at least you like something. But that whole like the fact that they have that strange dance sequence between Bob Hoskins and the lady in all the red,
Big
Bertha thing going on. I mean, that was just bizarre. It was such a bizarre sequence in an already bizarre, like in a film where nothing makes sense and it's tonally all over the shop. That sequence still stood out like a sore thumb as something from not just a different script, from a completely different movie. It was so strange.
This is a kid film, and he's putting teeth in cleavage to try and get that rock out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she is. But then you're talking about a film with so much S&M gear. Why do the goddamn garbage men all dress in S&M gear?
Gimp masks.
Yeah, they've totally got gimp masks on for no fucking reason. Yeah, it's upsetting. But the only thing maybe more upsetting than seeing those is seeing Daisy's father as the fungus.
I wrote it down.
So gross.
I wrote it down, right? So Daisy's father is the fungus. That is terrible. Sorry. But when he became a person, did Lance Henriksen lose a bet?
yeah, just pops up at the end. No, dude, he did not lose a bet. He won a bet because I bet you he was paid cash money for those 2 seconds on scene. When he dressed like a king, he sat on a throne, he said one line, and he probably walked away with $100,000.
Yeah,
he was over the fucking moon.
I'm back. Love those plumbers, and that was it. There was no more Lance Henriksen.
And the thing is, obviously, they were going for that big reveal. Like, all I can think in terms of a comparative scene is like the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, when Sean Connery shows up as the king. And of course, it brings the fucking house down because it's Sean Connery and he delivers the line, you know, you're not going to give away my daughter and all that. And like, this is amazing. In this, they're like, oh, we're going to do the same thing, only with Lars Henriksen, and he's going to have one clumsy line. It's not going to be in relation. He's not on screen with anyone else. It's, again, horribly delivered. And I can only assume they were going for that big reveal. And everyone, like most people in the cinema are like, who the fuck's that guy? And there's like one dude at the back who loves aliens. And I was like, I think that's Lars Henriksen. You know the alien guy? No.
He doesn't even look like Lance. He doesn't look like Lance Henriksen. Like, he doesn't. Lance Henriksen, we know, has, again, no slight to Lance Henriksen because I love him, but any film you ever see him in, dude looks aged. He looks weathered.
Well, he's got like the comb over and stuff and all that jazz.
But in this, like, even his skin, he looked pristine.
Younger.
Yeah,
which is it was weird, but like my big issue was just how gross the fungus was. I mean, I've already discussed the fact that I found this film aggressively unpleasant to look at, and the fungus. I can see where they were going with the whole mushrooms being in the game and stuff, but it just added to an already ugly set looking uglier. But I don't think there's anything more unpleasant to look at in this film than when you have I guess it's a tube because of the portals from Mario, and just that blob comes out, and it's like, this is supposed to be a kid's film. This looks like something from a David Cronenberg movie.
Yeah.
It is like legit, not gross in a kind of, I've been slime kind of way, like body horror stuff. It's unpleasant. It is really unpleasant. And again, then what they do, they add that, they put that fungus all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, it gets stuck on everyone. It's just, oh man.
That fungus all over the world looks all right. That fungus coming out of that tube, and I'm sorry, Rob, but this is gross, but why are they making it look like old pre-cum dripping off something?
Well, that is the problem. It's like, that sounds like maybe you're taking it too far, but if you go and watch this film, I mean, that's the kind of level we're talking about.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's disgusting on a bodily fluid level. Like I said, it's the Cronenberg aspect of it, that real body horror, almost sexualized in the grossest way possible. I really dislike it. I mean, I dislike everything about this film, and I think that was one of the things that stood out when I was younger. Like, you see that, and like, why am I looking at this when I'm 12 years old? This is, like, you think of what Mario Brothers looks like. It's so easy on the eye. It's nothing but blue skies and day glow colors. And then in the movie, you have this weird, I mean, now you put it in my head, a weird cum ball coming out of a tube. It's like, what kid wants to see that? And I know they were going for that Batman, okay, we want this film to appeal to kids and adults, but what kid in the world is
liking this? No way. No
fucking way. It was
so, like, two things sorry, go on.
No. Well, I was just like, I can't believe they had the audacity. The only thing modern about this film is that it feels like at the end like a Marvel film. The fact that it's so clearly set up for a sequel we are mercifully saved from, and the end credits, like the whole Super Cooper Cousins thing, it's very Marvel at the end in terms of like how blatantly this setting up a sequel. But my God, so, thank God we didn't.
Two things that upset me were completely different. Like, don't get me wrong, I was upset with the fungus coming out of there. Why it had to blow little bubbles as it's coming.
Oh yeah.
But when Mario goes to rescue his missus and the rest of the girls from New York, like, love, shut up. Hey, Mario! Like, love, just shut the fuck. She's literally told you, shut up. Like, don't say anything. It's not like
it was
not. And
it was such a kind of classic East Coast like kind of caricature trope, wasn't it? Like they can't keep their mouth shut, can they?
How big are the plumbers / air conditioning experts in Dinotopia? Because those fucking pipes where the air travels through are fucking massive. Well, they're big enough to fit a mattress, and that was a single mattress, by the way, that fit 6 people on, and the other mattress had 3 Goombas on. Okay, and you were able to go down an air conditioning pipe.
Yeah,
like it was a luge run.
Well, again, though, like the slowest luge run of all time. Like, you know, I guess at that point they're like, "Oh, this will be fun. We'll just turn it into a giant water slide, but without water. We'll just have air and beds and stuff instead." But they can't even manage on screen to make it look like it's going fast. Like we talked earlier about the chase sequence being slow, but this one's even worse. Like they're just sitting there on a mattress trying to look excited about it. There's no threat whatsoever. Like the most obvious comparison to something like that scene would be the cart chase in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Like a similar thing where you've got characters who are stuck on ostensibly a ride, because it was the same thing. You know, it was ridiculous. And it was basically, you've got two sets of characters stuck on, a theme park ride. Sorry, I couldn't get the word out. And you look at Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, and it's like, well, that's how you do it. That's how you make a ride put into a film like work on screen. This is the complete opposite. It's slow. There's no threat. There's no lava. The Goombas don't look like they're in any danger of causing anyone problems. It's like all I kept like watching was just having such a direct comparison to Indiana Jones. Like, how can it be so much worse? And again, you can't blame budget. They have, I suspect the budget for this was probably a lot higher than it was for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But they've ended up with this like budget ass tunnel system, and it's a really, it's disappointing on a visual level, and then it leads into all the stuff back on Earth, which is really clumsily delivered. Like by the end of this film, I don't think anyone has any idea what's going on. They just want to wrap it up. That's all anyone's interested in at that point, and it just
they wanted to get it quickly. On that chase scene with the 2 mattresses, I love how Mario was able to put the wrench in the side because they were able to go past it. He put the wrench in the side of in the hole on the side of the pipe, but then when you look at the Goombas, it's in the middle of the pipe. So they could hit it and fly over. Right.
Well, like I said, by this point, I think everyone had given up. They're like, listen, we just got to wrap this up. So balls to anything making sense. Let's just get a scene. Let's get it in the can and get the hell out the door before Dennis Hopper decides to kill everyone on set.
We've talked about this film for nearly an hour, right? So we do need to move on. But
we really do.
The whole reason we watched this film is, does Fisher Stevens belong on my Mount Rushmore? That was the whole reason I wanted to watch this film.
Yeah.
Dude's on there.
Does he?
He's on there.
Well, I mean, it's a strange one because, yes, he is bad in this film. But, you think about some of the other characters you picked for your Mount Rushmore, and they're terrible performances in otherwise good or at least enjoyable films.
Yeah.
But I would argue that Fisher Stevens in this film is the least of this film's problems. Like, I don't think he's very good. Like I said, I'm not even convinced he's the worst of their little duo. But again, I'm not sure if you're putting Fisher Stevens on there because you legitimately think he's good, or you knowingly... if you're fully aware that he's terrible in this film, I'm very confused. But I think a lot of my confusion comes from having watched this film, because everything's bad. You could stick anything on your wall of terribleness from this film, legitimately anything. So I agree with you, Fisher Stevens is bad, but there's so many things in this film which are so much worse. It's
his hair. It's the way he moves his head. It's like you said, when they become smarter, it's just their vocabulary that changes. But it's just, I don't know.
Well, what I'll say is, if he gave that performance in nearly any other movie, I would absolutely agree with you. It's just in this film, his performance is just totally just kind of like, it almost washed over me because everyone's terrible. Everything about this film is bad. So he doesn't stand out. That's the problem. Because
I see what you're saying. I mean, he's going
in
on
a sea of shit. He's just another turd swimming downstream. That's all it is.
He's going on my Mount Rushmore because yes, he belongs on there. But maybe then because he was Mr. the Plague in The Hackers.
yeah. Well, like I said, when I think of Fisher Stevens, I will never think of his character in this film. I will always think of Hackers, and I just love it. Like, that way.
What was it? Penn Juliet from Penn and Teller. When he's on the phone and he goes, "Hey, the Plague." He goes, "Mister." Okay, Mister the Plague. It always makes me laugh.
So bad, dude. I even prefer his little turn in Friends to this.
Oh, where he was the psychiatrist.
Yeah. Like there's so many other films I prefer to see him in this, but then that's true of everyone. So we will wrap up this.
Oh my God!
Film.
Yes. Fisher Stevens from My Science Project, an 80s. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
So it's Dennis Hopper's in that as well, I suppose. So it's a film set in the 80s where you got a cool guy. He was the best friend from Christine. The one that destroys Christine at the end. I can't remember his name, but him and Fisher Stevens, and oh my God, you need to watch Fisher Stevens in this film. They decide to do a science project.
I might need a break from Fisher Stevens for a little while.
I'm sending you this on YouTube later. So, sorry, so they go into an abandoned airfield to find a science project. They find this weird orb thing.
Yeah. The
orb thing is like a trans-dimension machine.
I do know the film you mean.
Yeah.
I have seen the trailer, but I've not seen the film. But I know the movie, yeah.
But it's Fisher Stevens in this because he's got like, they're in like Maine or somewhere, but he's got like a New York accent and he's wearing those New York 80s gloves with the little studs on them. The scene where they end up they're carrying machine guns, like all of a sudden in the hallways of the school, it's like 70s Vietnam, but they're fighting. It's insane, this film. And Dennis Hopper is the hippie teacher who gets abducted by this orb.
Well, what's truly insane is, I think, there are legitimately a million podcasts out there. I would be amazed if any podcast on earth has mentioned Fisher Stevens as many times as we have. Like, there's just no fucking way. There is no way another podcast on planet Earth has said the two words Fisher and Stevens as many times as we have. There's no chance. Or goddamn name that orb film you're banging on about. I swear to God, you've seen every single movie made in the 80s. It is bananas. I've seen a lot of them, but I don't think I've, like then, when you're like, have you seen this? And I'm like, no. I don't think I've ever mentioned a film from the 80s and said, have you seen this? And you've responded with no. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. Every single time. Every single time. But yeah, we will. This is going to be sorry, mate.
I was just say, I still got to go outside and play, but I just didn't sleep apparently.
Oh yeah. You just watched a lot of
films. Yeah.
That's absolutely acceptable. This is going to be tricky because we do a love-hate section. Now, the hate section is going to be tricky because I could pick a million and one things. Love.
Can I?
Yeah.
So can I throw a curveball?
Go for it.
Do you want to do a hate section?
No, because I have managed to find three things.
All right. I know. I'm joking. I got three as well. I got three.
So I've got Bob Hoskins down as number one, theoretically. I don't think he gives a great performance, but on paper, casting Bob Hoskins as Mario in 1993 was inspired. It's just everything around it meant that it just never worked out. So theoretically, Bob Hoskins. Number two, I've already mentioned earlier, Yoshi, who I think is a technological marvel. But regardless of the year, as an animatronic, it's unbelievable to see on screen. Really is. It's just it's a crime that it doesn't get more screen time, but whatever. And number three, the suits are indeed pretty cool. Like they do, like you don't get them until very late in the film. You do get trolled just before it, where they put them in suits which are the wrong colors. But when they do finally get into like the proper plumber suits, a la the video game, it gives you that slightest hint of what could have been when you see Bob Hoskins in the iconic red suit, and you're like, "Yep, that looks bang on." But yeah, it doesn't come close to saving this film.
So this is trolling the deep ends of this film, trying to find three things I love. Right? So
you see Fisher fucking Stevens. My God, I am just hanging up. It'll be the end of this podcast. And I don't mean just this podcast. I mean the podcast. That'll be it.
Well, we had a good run. We had a good run.
Yeah.
So number one was, surprise, surprise, Everybody walked their dinosaur.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a catchy song. It's a catchy song.
I know.
It's a bad song, but it is catchy.
It is terrible. It is terrible.
I mean, even before this film, when you sung that briefly on a previous podcast, I walked away and it was in my head for like the next 2 days. So yeah, it is catchy.
Number 2, I'm with you, the suits. When you finally get the suits, it's great for the first 30 seconds up until you get glug, 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 glug. But yeah, no, the suits are great. And number 3 came to me whilst we were actually talking about the film today. John Leguizamo winds you up so much in this film. I love that.
Oh god, I don't particularly like John, and again, I don't think it's his performance. I think it comes back to the writing. I think he's really poorly written, and I think he, in particular, more so than anyone else, is a character on the cusp of 3 different scripts. I don't think they ever decided on what kind of character he was going to be, and in the end, I think he, in particular, is a bit of a mess as a character.
Yeah, so they're my 3. So
okay. Hey, yeah, I mean, as you can guess, there could have been a lot, but the aesthetic, I never got over the aesthetic. It's a, like, as I said, I described it as an avant-garde levels of ugliness, and I absolutely stand by that. It's unbelievably unpleasant to look at. You previously mentioned it, glug, 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 the worst catchphrase in movie history, as far as I can tell. It's a tonal mess, like the tonal inconsistency driving on the wall. And I have to sneak in a 4th one, the Goombas. I hate the Goombas so much. I can't stand the design. They're so ugly. So they're my 4. And don't get me wrong, they're 4 of the things I hate of many. There could have been so many more. They've just been handpicked. So
for me, the film as a whole.
yeah, that's a great shout. Yeah.
The film as a whole. Cooper's second in command, Mrs. whatever she was, really pissed me off. No.
Yeah, was that Fiona Shaw as Lena? I think that was.
Yeah, that was her. Yeah, Fiona Shaw as Lena.
She's a good actress, but like you're watching this film, and the fact that we haven't brought it up until now, it's like she does not need to be in this film at all. No. Another one of those, like I have no doubt there is another version of the script where she has a more prominent role, and her character probably made sense at some point. But in the movie that we ended up watching, she does not need to be in it at all. She makes no sense. All she does is walk around looking very 90s. That's it.
Yeah. Really...
That's a great shout.
Really ticked me off in this film. There was no point in her whatsoever.
No. It's not a great performance, but again, I don't want to blame Fiona Shaw because she's given nothing to work with. Like, she doesn't have a character. It's completely pointless.
And number 3 is a random one, but we've already mentioned it a couple of times. The slow action set pieces. But do you know what really, really pissed me off of everything was those fucking jump boots. They looked great doing it, but they were so slow when they moved. Like, you could literally catch somebody. As like when Luigi does this, right, jump on my feet and I'll give you a lift at the end, and then they jump and they travel across. They're not floating. They're fucking flying. But they're going so slow. It's such... it upset me so much that there was just the inaccuracies in this film.
Weird, because I totally know what you mean. They don't move in a natural way whatsoever, but I guess that's just a technological issue because they had to shoot it kind of obviously on a practical level. But my biggest issue is the fact that once they get them, they only use them so sporadically. Like, you just think, well, you've got these jumping boots and they could have been useful on so many occasions.
Like when Luigi jumps across the chasm to nowhere. I mean, come on, exactly. Could you have a jumping boot?
He could have used the jumping boots there. But it is really silly. So they look cool. They're a good idea on paper, but they're poorly implemented in the film for sure. Yeah. I think that comes under, rather than just being unpleasant or annoying, that's one of those elements where it's like it is a legitimate disappointment because you've got a good idea there, but you just didn't use it to any reasonable effect.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Right, we better move on. Facts.
I haven't got many. I think we've covered all the ones, about script and stuff. Beyond the fact that they were supposedly always drunk on set. I think Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo used to drink quite heavily between shots. The cast, because they all had these mansions they were staying in, would go away and get baked, after filming. And Bob Hoskins has the biggest regret of his career, which I can totally understand. But they're the only facts I picked out of many.
Luigi broke Bob Hoskins' finger when he slams the door on his hand, and for the rest of the film, Hoskins is wearing a cast that was painted pink to look like his hand.
Amazing.
Okay, yeah. John Leguizamo stated that he and Hoskins hated working on the film. They got drunk to make it through the experience. Both men apparently knew the movie would turn out bad, so they simply tried to make the best of it. He also stated he felt one of the biggest reasons the movie turned out the way it did was because the directors wanted a more adult movie, while the studio considered the source. Yeah, we've already said that one. Dennis Hopper described the film's production. It was a nightmare. Very honestly, that movie, it was a husband and wife directing team who were both control freaks and wouldn't talk before they made decisions. Anyway, I was supposed to go down there for 5 weeks, and I was there for 17. No wonder he blew up.
Oh,
he was meant to be there for 5 weeks. He was there for 17 weeks.
Yeah, and especially in a film where you can see that nobody believes in it. I have no doubt, like so many things in life, you can see the wheels are falling off. You can see the disaster that's to come. But you've just got to keep working at it. It's like, dude, I was supposed to be here for 5 weeks. That was like fucking 3 months ago, and I'm still here. Jesus Christ.
Right.
I can imagine Dennis Hopper would have a bit of a temper at the best times as well.
Bear with me on these facts. Actor hated the film. Actor hated the film. Actor hated the film. Fucking hell. Yeah, worst film he ever made. Yeah. Article in Spy Magazine claimed that the script was being rewritten so many times. Sorry, you've already said that one. Super Scope. Michael Keaton, we've done that one. Tom Hanks, we've done that one.
Covered all the facts.
I'm pretty sure we have.
All the facts.
One we haven't got. Last one. The set for Dino Hatton was built in an abandoned cement factory called the Ideal Cement Factory in the woods outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. Set designs were adapted to the existing structure of the building. The factory was also used as the Shredder and Foot Clan's hideout in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Top Dollar's nightclub in The Crow. I'm basically reiterating what we did 2 weeks ago when we did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I said the same fact.
Yeah, well, at least Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a fun film to rewatch, so that's something. It reminded me of better times when we did podcasts on The Crow and Teenage. I was like, oh god, those are good films. I quite enjoyed those.
Oh, that was a good rewatch. What the fuck was this?
As for legacy, obviously, really weird. The oddest thing, I guess, was like it feels like Trump's presidential run was inspired by Dennis Hopper as King Koopa. He really had a Donald Trump vibe. I actually read afterwards that he based his performance on Donald Trump. So it's kind of like the snake is eating itself kind of thing. Yeah. But there was definitely a Donald Trump thing about his performance. But it's one of those, I guess, the legacy is a bit of a strange one in its place in movie history because there are so many terrible video game adaptations. Like, I think we mentioned previously that the best one is probably Sonic the Hedgehog, which is a perfectly serviceable 3-star family film. I don't think I could go as far as say this is the worst because I'm not sure if you've seen any of the Uwe Boll video game adaptations. He did like House of the Dead and Far Cry and stuff. Make no mistake, of course, like those are fundamentally worse films than this. And this film, despite the fact that I dislike it so much, there is impressive stuff on a technical level going on in this film. But what I will say is I think this is the most disappointing video game adaptation of all time. Like, Assassin's Creed was disappointing. Prince of Persia was disappointing. Neither of those films were anywhere as near as bad as this. And you've got to remember, this is based on video games' greatest icon. Like, there's no one in video games who comes close to Super Mario Brothers. And this is the movie that they ended up with.
I will argue, because you're saying Sonic the Hedgehog is probably one of the... I will argue that actually Uncharted is probably up there. I think that's...
I haven't seen Uncharted yet, in fairness.
I think that's probably a better video game adaptation we're getting these days. I mean, you can't go wrong with basically treasure hunting. Do you know what I mean? But...
Well, there's in fairness, Detective Pikachu was quite good as well. It wasn't quite as good. I had really high hopes for that, and it wasn't quite as good as I hoped, but I did like Detective Pikachu.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because that was actually... Because Nintendo pulled all their... After Super Mario Brothers, Nintendo pulled all their... I say all, there was going to be a Metro... All their IP from being video games up until Detective Pikachu. And that was actually rated really highly. That was one of the highest rated video game
The one thing they did... They took rather than just go for Pokemon, they took an obscure spin-off that was released on the 3DS in Japan.
Yeah.
And kind of turned that into a film. But the one thing they did more than anything else is they captured the tone of the world. Like when you see the Pokemon battles, when you see the Pokemon themselves, and some of them are nightmare fuel, but some of the Pokemon are indeed nightmare fuel. They're these horrible little monsters. But it just looked the part, and it felt like the Pokemon world brought to life. And you saw that no more so than with Pikachu himself. Pikachu is one of the greatest characters. Like, he's so fucking cute. Like, obviously, he's great when he's doing the Ryan Reynolds voice.
Yeah, but when he's doing not.
Pika, Pika, You know, you're just like, oh my God, I want to fucking take this little bastard home. He's so cute. You don't want to take anything from Super Mario Brothers, the movie, home. That's for damn sure. So yeah, at the very least, they captured the tone, something they failed spectacularly to do here.
As part of legacy, and this may not be due to the film, obviously, it's going to be more for, but they're doing a Super Mario Brothers movie again, aren't they? It's an animated feature with Chris Pratt as the Italian plumber. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah,
and that's the really odd one where you're like, is that going to work? But then you hear that Seth Rogen's going to be a Donkey Kong, and you're like, oh, that sounds absolutely bang on. But then, you know, we're shitting on the whole Chris Pratt being, you know, cast as Mario. But like I said, in 92, 93, you would have heard Bob Hoskins as Mario, and you would have thought, well, that's perfect. And it turned into an absolute shitstorm. Yeah. So maybe this whole Chris Pratt thing is going to work out. Who knows? Who knows? What else do I have down? Yeah, the new animated film. I mean, I guess the surprising thing is, as bad as this film was, and it was such a flop, it was so far removed from the video games that it did apparently no damage to Nintendo or their IP. You know, this had no negative impact on Super Mario Brothers as a video game franchise at all, because it was nothing like it. There's, you know, in the same way that Street Fighter, the movie, had no negative impact on Street Fighter, the game, because it was so, not quite as bad as this, but so far removed. That'd be another interesting one to go back to, because Street Fighter 2 is, I think that falls closer into the category of, say, as we mentioned earlier, the Batman and Robin thing. Yeah. Like, Street Fighter, the movie, is terrible, really, really bad, but it's fun terrible. You know, I think you can take a level of enjoyment of watching it and go, oh my God, this is a train wreck, but it's an entertaining train wreck. There's no joy to be taken.
Well, no, I mean, we don't want to get into it, but Street Fighter, the movie, they're actually enjoying what they do. And Raul Julia is loving what he's doing.
Oh, dude, he's absolutely chewing the scenery. Yeah, he's there to have a good time. He's like, well, I know exactly what kind of mess I'm in, and I'm going to have as much fun as possible. So there is joy to be taken.
I know it's not the Street Fighter podcast, but he knew he was dying, so this was the last film he was going to do to get a paycheck to support his family. So he thought, you know, if it's the last film I'm going to do, I'm going to enjoy what I do.
Yeah, and that is a mess of a film, but there was genuinely fun stuff going on in that film.
Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li. I could take Ming-Na Wen as Chun-Li all day long, so I'm good with that.
Well, like I said, you know, I stand by the fact that it's still terrible, but there's you can totally have fun watching that film. You can imagine, you know, like late night movie screenings. Like, if you had you know, a midnight screening of Street Fighter, you could go with like a like-minded crowd and really enjoy it. All in the knowledge that it's kind of shit, but it's fun. Like I said, you can do the same with Batman and Robin. There's a whole host of films which fall into this category of they're bad, but you could go there and you could enjoy watching it. No one is going to a midnight screening of Super Mario Brothers. Nobody.
I'm surprised.
You would just sit there miserable as fuck.
I reckon Amazon Prime's version has only had 2 people watch it, me and you.
I think it might be.
Do we have to cover? Do we need to cover soundtrack? I mean, aside from
very briefly, because the interesting thing is, and again, it speaks to the fact that there was a lot of talent involved in this film, is that Alan Silvestri did the score for this film.
I know.
This is a guy who did Endgame, he did Back to the Future, Predator, Forrest Gump, The Abyss, some of the most iconic scores of all time. And in this, it is the most generic early 90s family-friendly score I have ever heard in my life. It is so utterly forgettable. And you've got to remember, Super Mario Brothers has some of the not most iconic movie in video game history, some of the most iconic music, full stop. You could play the Super Mario theme tune to pretty much anyone on the planet, and they'd be like, yeah, I've heard that. Super Mario, just the first couple of bars, and yeah, I know exactly what that is. And somehow they've gone from that to this utterly, I wouldn't even go as far to say it's bad. It's just so bland and forgettable. And the fact that, you know, you just think, oh, Super Mario Brothers and Alan Silvestri, this should be a match made in heaven. No, it's a match made in complete forgetfulness. It's like I said, it's not even a bad score. It's just a totally forgettable one. But there are some interesting songs on the soundtrack. There's obviously the aforementioned Everybody Do the Dinosaur. The fact that top billing in the credits actually goes to Roxette. Yes. This song, almost unreal. I have never seen that in any other movie in my life. Like how much they would like, please Roxette, please can you be in the movie? Only if you give us top billing. Well, on the poster, we can't do, okay, well, at least in the end credits. Like above Bob Hoskins, absolutely. And it has to be bold and it can only be our name. All right, we'll do it. And they fucking do it. Yeah. It's insane. But, you know, I do like Roxette. And one of the guys who listened to the podcast, Dan Goldsworthy, he didn't mention that there's a great Megadeth song on the soundtrack as well.
Yeah, the Megadeth song is insane.
which is bananas. So yeah, the soundtrack is much more interesting than the totally forgettable score, but like so much of this film, it doesn't suit the film at all.
Yeah.
Like Roxette doesn't suit, Megadeth definitely doesn't suit. The dinosaur song, yes, maybe, we'll give it that. But obviously, we've got to talk briefly about video games.
Well, this is going to be an interesting one, because this is the first video game adaptation film we've covered. So we usually do what would we like to see as a video game from the film.
I'd like to see the video game.
And that's basically it. I mean, my argument, same as yours, is just give me Super Mario Brothers 1 to 3. Like, I'm good with these games.
The closest thing to this, in terms of alternate universes and stuff, is, funnily enough, is the most recent Super Mario Brothers game, Super Mario Odyssey, for the Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, it doesn't have as much of a narrative, but it is Mario going to a number of alternate universes and just kind of leaning back into kind of, you know, it's more open world than your traditional Super Mario Brothers game, but it's still kind of classic platforming. But yeah, that's what this film could have been. It could have been Mario jumping through the warp tunnels to different universes and stuff. And that game is phenomenal. Like, Super Mario Odyssey is one of the greatest games of all time, but still somehow isn't the best Super Mario Brothers game. Like Super Mario Galaxy 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, and Super Mario Brothers World are all probably still better than Super Mario Odyssey, despite the fact that Super Mario Odyssey is a 10 out of 10 game. Wow. That's how good. It's not just, like, Sonic is an icon of video games, yeah, but his video games range from good to absolute garbage. The mainline Mario games are nearly all 10-star games, other than Super Mario Brothers 2, the Western released one, which isn't a Super Mario Brothers game, so forget that. It's just gold after gold. Like, the games are of such an incredibly high standard on every conceivable level that to go from that to this fucking movie is so upsetting.
I'll take your word for it, because Mario 1, 2, 3, and Mario Kart on the 64 is basically my knowledge of Mario, because
well, like you said, even the spin-offs, Mario Kart is one of the great, like, the most recent games. I say recent games. Super Mario Kart 8 was released on the Wii U like almost a decade ago. It's getting DLC on the Switch now, and it's still the greatest kart game of all time by a country mile. Like, that's the level of quality we're talking about when we talk about Mario. And I guess the interesting thing, and this comes back to legacy, is the fact that Nintendo was so blasé with their mascot to allow this film to get made. Yeah. Now they've gone the complete opposite. They're so famously protective of their IP. Like, if you try and post anything on YouTube about Nintendo Mario, it gets removed almost immediately. Nintendo are so, they're like, listen, Nintendo stuff either comes from us or it doesn't come from anywhere. And I think a lot of it comes back to this, when they had this one, like, kind of blasting, we'll let them make a movie. What the fuck have they done? Close down everything. Nothing comes out of Kyoto. This is it. It's just, it comes out of Nintendo's building, but no one else.
Well, let's be fair, because this isn't even a blemish. This is a fucking crater of a problem.
This really is. But like you said, the great thing for Nintendo was that it was so ill-conceived and it was so far, so distantly removed from what we understand as being Mario, that the two are never talked about in the same breath. Yeah. Nobody ever goes, oh, well, Jesus Christ, that's kind of tarnished the reputation. No, it hasn't whatsoever. Super Mario just exists as a video game. As you said, we're probably the only two people who have watched this film on Amazon. And Jesus Christ, if you've watched this because of us, I mean, Rob apologized at the top. I'll apologize at the back end of this podcast. We are very sorry.
Very sorry. And I'd like to say we won't do it to you again, but wait and see. I mean,
wait and see.
Howard the Duck cough.
Well, even Howard the Duck is better than this. Jesus Christ. All right,
let's get into scoring. Let's get into scoring and recommend. Can I guess? Can I guess? Don't say it. No, don't say it. I was hoping before you said anything that you bring in 0.5.
Honestly, I could have.
Yeah, to me, it's a 1 star, and no, I would not recommend it to anyone.
I wouldn't recommend this to my worst enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, mate, you killed my family, but don't watch Mario.
Yeah. No, I can't remember. I mean, in terms of rewatching, obviously a big part of this podcast is us going back, rewatching the films of our youth, kind of reassessing them. Do they hold up? All this other stuff, trying to see what that wrote. Like, nearly every film, even like the one of the film I've gone back and rewatched and I've not enjoyed was The Flight of the Navigator. But The Flight of the Navigator wasn't a terrible film. It just wasn't for me, and obviously for you as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't despise rewatching it. I was just indifferent towards it. This is the only film we've gone back to and rewatched that I've actively disliked. And I can't imagine there being many films out there. And like, you know, there are terrible films made for low budgets, but in terms of a big budget mainstream movie, I can't think of many films I dislike as much as this film. That's how much I dislike it. So yeah, I would potentially give it 0.5, but I think 1 star gets the message across.
Yep. 1 star, don't watch it. Just move on. Just listen to this podcast and take our word for it. Honestly, on this one, don't even make your own mind up. Just move on.
Yes, no, listening to us is more than enough for anyone to be put through. So yeah, we're going to move on to greener pastures next week.
Yeah, so it's your turn. So I'm intrigued. What are we doing for next week?
Next week, it's actually a listener request. Liam Pietzka, who grew up just around the corner from me back in Cardiff, actually lives over in Australia now. So we've got international listeners, even if they were from Cardiff originally. He's requested one of my favourite films from my youth, and a perfectly timed one, given it's the start of the baseball season now, for anyone who's interested in baseball like me, A League of Their Own. Say, we won't go into spoiler territory, but I can assure you it's a lot better than... has one link to Super Mario Brothers, Tom Hanks. But Tom Hanks gives a great performance in this film, but Gina Davis is in it. It's got a really bizarre cast. Madonna's in it. Rosie O'Donnell, sorry.
Yeah.
But everyone's great in it. And it's further proof that American sports are the only ones that really work on screen. But I'm really looking forward to going back to this one.
Yeah, because I've seen it maybe once or twice previously on ITV. When he used to, so it'll be interesting to go back and watch this one. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it used to be on TV all the time, or at least semi-regularly, but I've not seen it on TV for the longest time, and I couldn't find it on any of the streaming channels. I think you can kind of probably stream on Amazon Prime if you're willing to pay. Same with YouTube. I end up buying the DVD, but yeah, this really is a much more enjoyable film. So don't be put off by Super Mario Brothers. If you can get the opportunity, rewatch A League of Their Own. I don't think you'll regret it, even if you've never seen it before. This is a really good sports film with some great performances. So yeah, thanks for suffering your way through Super Mario Brothers, and please do join us next week for A League of Their Own, a very different movie. But as always, thanks for listening. Catch you guys next week. Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Glug, 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 glug.